My towel finally gave way, slipping to the floor in a soft heap. Maria exhaled, her voice filled with admiration, her gaze locked on me. She traced her fingers along my curves, her touch full of reverence, as though she was memorizing every inch of me. This is where it all began. I'm Maria, and I must say, beauty has always been by my side. Even at 65, my curvy body, smooth skin, and captivating smile make heads turn. My thick grey hair falls in gentle waves past my shoulders, and my warm honey brown eyes seem to hide a secret that draws people in. Even in my quiet life, where I've distanced myself from romantic pursuits since my husband passed, I still feel the weight of stares and whispers wherever I go. But none of that concerns me now. My life has been calm and predictable, and I've grown accustomed to it. I've made the choice to stay away from love. It's not as if I haven't had offers. Men of all ages, from silver-haired gentlemen looking for companionship to younger men who could be my sons, have tried to win me over. But I always say no. I tell myself I'm too old for the games of romance. But deep down, I know it's more than that. I've locked my heart away. I've known loss, and the thought of reopening that door again frightens me. One evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, I received a call from Greg. He is my elder sister's only son. In his mid-30s, full of energy, with a mischievous grin that always promises trouble. Greg is tall, athletic, and his confident swagger often makes heads turn, especially among women. My sister Lucy has often called to complain about his flirtatious nature. Maria, she'd say, this boy's going to give me a heart attack one day. He won't stop chasing skirts. I'd always laugh it off, telling her it was just a phase. That boys his age are often like that. But deep down, I knew Greg was different. There was something in the way he carried himself. A charm, an undeniable magnetism that made it easy for women to fall for him, even when they knew better. Hi, Aunt Maria. Greg's cheerful voice came over the phone. I hope I'm not interrupting. Not at all, I answered. What's going on? I was wondering if I could stay with you for the weekend. I just need to take a break from everything, Greg replied, his voice hesitant. I paused, taken aback. It wasn't like Greg to ask for a place to stay without a specific reason, especially when his busy social life and career kept him occupied. My home, tucked away from the city's hustle, was quiet and cozy. A far cry from the excitement a young man like Greg would usually enjoy. Yet, there was something in his tone that made me pause. It wasn't a casual request. There seemed to be an unspoken need behind his words. After a brief pause, I replied, a mix of concern and affection in my voice. Of course, Greg. You're always welcome here whenever you need a break. This is your home too. Thanks, Aunt Maria, he responded, his voice a little lighter. I'll be there by Friday evening. As soon as we hung up, curiosity settled over me. What was he running from? Was it a woman, a failed relationship, or a disagreement with his mother? Greg had always been a mystery, full of surprises, layers that made him seem impossible to fully understand. I couldn't help but wonder what had driven him to seek refuge here, and what the weekend might reveal. As Friday approached, the hours seemed to slip away quickly, and before I knew it, evening had come. I was sitting in the living room when I heard the unmistakable sound of his car pulling into the driveway. I stood up, eager yet slightly anxious, and opened the door. Greg stood there, a familiar yet subtly changed version of the young man I had known for years. He wore dark jeans and a fitted black t-shirt that highlighted his athletic build. He looked effortlessly handsome, his smile as warm and bright as ever. But there was something more in his eyes, a flicker of restlessness, a quiet tension that didn't match his usual confident demeanor. "Aunt Maria," he called, his voice full of affection as he pulled me into a tight hug. "You look amazing, as always." I couldn't help but chuckle at his charm, a trait he never seemed to lose. "And you're as charming as ever," I teased back, laughing. "Come on in. Let's get you settled." As Greg stepped inside, his eyes took in the familiar surroundings of my home. The cozy living room, bathed in soft ambient light, welcomed him. The scent of freshly baked bread still lingered in the air, adding to the warmth of the space. My home had always been a peaceful refuge, a place where one could breathe a little easier. But tonight, as Greg looked around, I sensed he was trying to find his place in it, as if searching for peace in a moment of quiet chaos. What had brought him here? And what was he really hoping to find this weekend? I had a feeling I was about to find out. "Wow," Greg said, settling onto the couch with a sigh, as if the weight of the world had momentarily lifted. "I've really missed this place," I chuckled and teased. "You're acting like it's been years since you were last here." He leaned back, closing his eyes briefly before replying. "Well, it feels like it's been a whirlwind lately, and I haven't had a chance to catch my breath." I raised an eyebrow, my curiosity piqued. I stayed silent, hoping he'd elaborate, but he simply shook his head with a faint smile, as if he wasn't ready to dive deeper just yet. As the evening wore on, we moved outside to the garden. The gentle breeze whispered through the trees, carrying the sweet scent of blooming flowers. The peaceful atmosphere seemed to encourage Greg to open up more. We sat there in comfortable silence for a while, the sounds of crickets and rustling leaves creating a soft background hum. Eventually, Greg broke the silence. "You know, Aunt Maria," he began, his voice softer than usual. "Sometimes I feel like I'm stuck in a never-ending loop. The parties, the women, they're fun at first, but after a while, it all just feels draining." His words surprised me. This wasn't the confident, carefree Greg I knew. The young man who always carried himself with effortless charm was now showing his vulnerability. A wave of concern washed over me as I realized just how much he had been carrying. I thought about his words for a moment before replying gently, "Maybe it's time for a change." Greg sighed, his gaze turning distant as he stared at the garden. "Maybe," he murmured. "But it's not that simple. People have these expectations of me, you know? It's like I can't step off the path they've laid out for me without letting them down." I moved closer, placing a hand gently on his. "Greg," I said softly, my voice steady but full of compassion. "You don't have to live up to anyone else's expectations. You're still so young. You have plenty of time to figure things out and live life on your own terms." For a long moment he stared at me, his eyes searching mine with an intensity I hadn't expected. There was something unspoken between us, something in the depth of his gaze that made my heart skip a beat. It unsettled me, though I couldn't explain why. The weekend passed in a blur of quiet moments and conversations that seemed to stretch on forever. Greg, initially reserved, began to relax as the days unfolded, and I found myself growing more comfortable with his presence. It was a pleasant surprise, one I hadn't anticipated. But as the weekend went on, I began to appreciate his company more than I had thought possible. Still, there were these fleeting moments, subtle yet unmistakable, when I'd catch him looking at me in a way that stirred something deep inside. It wasn't anything overt, just the occasional lingering glance or soft, almost secretive smile that felt different, as if there was more being said in that quiet exchange than words could convey. Greg's stay at my house turned out to be unexpectedly sweet in a way I never could have predicted. His energy and laughter filled the rooms, and he teased me in a playful, almost boyish way that made me feel lighter, as though the weight of the years had momentarily lifted. There was an infectious quality to his presence that made my home feel alive, a feeling I hadn't experienced in what seemed like forever. One afternoon, as we stood together in the kitchen, preparing vegetables for dinner, I couldn't help but smile at how easily he seemed to bring joy into the simplest tasks. His hands moved swiftly and rhythmically, but every so often, he'd pause, grab a piece of cucumber and pop it into his mouth with a grin that made me laugh. I gazed at him and said, "You're spoiling me." My voice held a mix of teasing and sincerity. He gave me a playful wink, his expression warm and genuine. "You deserve it, Aunt Maria," he replied, his tone brimming with affection. "You do so much for everyone else. It's about time someone takes care of you for a change." His words resonated deeply with me, warming me in a way I hadn't anticipated. It had been such a long time since anyone made me feel truly pampered, and Greg did it so effortlessly, never making a big deal about it. Whether it was preparing a perfect cup of tea in the morning or fixing small things around the house that I had long since ignored, his actions spoke volumes. He made me feel cherished and valued, something I hadn't experienced in years. It was then that I realized how much I had missed that kind of attention. But it wasn't only his kindness that affected me. It was also Greg's playful nature, which left a lasting impression. His light-heartedness was infectious, often catching me off guard. He had an uncanny ability to sneak up behind me, surprising me with a sudden hug or a soft kiss on my cheek or neck. Every time he did, I'd gasp in surprise, only to hear his teasing voice. "Aunt Maria, you're always so serious. You need to relax a little." I couldn't help but laugh at his antics, playfully swatting him away. Yet, even as I did, I couldn't shake the warmth that lingered long after his touch had left me. His light yet intentional contact stayed with me, occupying my thoughts in a way I couldn't fully explain. One evening, I was sitting on the couch, engrossed in a book, when Greg casually dropped down beside me, as carefree as ever. Without hesitation, he threw his arm over my shoulders and leaned in to peer at the pages. I was so absorbed by his closeness that it nearly overwhelmed me, and I could feel the heat of his body next to mine. "Is it a love story?" His voice was teasing, yet curious, which only made me more aware of him than I cared to admit. "It's none of your business," I quickly retorted, my cheeks flushing as I felt the weight of his gaze. Greg chuckled at my response, his deep laugh sending a shiver down my spine. He shifted even closer, his fingers brushing lightly against my arm as he adjusted his position. The brief touch was enough to send a jolt through me, and I immediately stood, pretending to adjust the curtains in an attempt to hide my discomfort. "You're too restless," I muttered, trying my best to sound irritated, though my heart raced. "You love it," Greg replied, his voice dripping with mischief. His playful grin made my breath catch in my throat. I didn't respond, choosing instead to turn away, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he had unsettled me. in a way I hadn't expected. Days passed, but the effect of Greg's presence was undeniable. His playful gestures, the way his gaze lingered on me, and the intimacy in his casual actions began to affect me in ways I couldn't control. It wasn't just his words or his touch. It was the way he made me feel alive, awakened in ways I hadn't realized I'd been missing. I found myself anticipating his hugs, his teasing comments, the way his proximity stirred up a sense of excitement and longing. It was becoming impossible to deny. One night, late in the evening, the house unusually quiet, with only the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the occasional chirp of crickets filling the silence. I was alone in the kitchen, putting away dishes. I heard footsteps behind me and turned to find Greg walking in, his muscular chest and arms bare. The soft light above cast gentle shadows across his skin. The sight of him so effortlessly confident and unguarded made my heart race, though I couldn't quite understand why. "Can't sleep?" he asked, his voice softer than usual, as if he were trying to break through the walls I'd put up. "Not really," I replied, my gaze briefly flickering to him before quickly looking away, feeling the weight of his attention. He took a slow step forward, closing the space between us, and leaned against the counter. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes were searching mine, waiting for me to meet him halfway. "You've been quiet today," he noted, concern lacing his tone. "Is everything okay?" I nodded, but the tightness in my chest told a different story. There was a tension between us, thick and palpable. I could feel it surrounding us, and his gaze pulled me in. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence hung heavy and expectant. Finally, Greg broke it, his voice a whisper that seemed to linger in the air. "You know, Aunt Maria," he began, his words almost confessional, "you're the most beautiful woman I've ever known." I froze, my breath catching in my throat. His words struck me in a way I wasn't prepared for, sending a jolt of electricity through me. My heart raced, the beats echoing loudly in the stillness between us. "Greg, don't say things like that," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper, unable to meet the intensity of his gaze. "Why not?" he asked, his voice steady, but with a vulnerability that made it harder to dismiss. "It's the truth." He took another step forward, his hand reaching out slowly, almost as if giving me the chance to stop him. But I didn't. His fingers gently brushed a strand of hair from my face. The touch, though soft, was enough to make my breath catch again, setting off a series of reactions inside me that I couldn't control. A pull I couldn't ignore. "Greg, this isn't what I began. But he interrupted me, his voice low and almost a murmur, though it held undeniable certainty. I felt my heart race as a swirl of emotions filled my mind. I opened my mouth to protest, to say something to stop this before it went any further. But no words came. Instead, all I could do was stand there, frozen, as his hand slid to my waist. The heat from his touch burned through my clothes, pulling me closer to him, closer than I ever imagined. I could feel the strength in his arms as they enveloped me, his body radiating warmth, a heat that seemed to ignite something inside me that I had tried to keep buried. The space between us vanished, and all that remained was the frantic rhythm of my heart, the pressure of his body against mine. "Greg, we can't," I whispered, my voice trembling, but even as the words left my lips, my body didn't move away. It stayed pressed against his. betraying everything I had told myself was true. His lips brushed my cheek, so close to my mouth that I could almost feel the warmth of his breath on my skin. The brief touch made my breath hitch, and for a moment, the world seemed to freeze. Time seemed to stretch, unbearably thick with the weight of our unspoken desires. I don't know how long we stayed like that. Neither of us moving, neither of us breaking the silence. The words that needed to be said hung unsaid, but they filled the space between us, thick and charged. Finally, I broke away, my chest rising and falling with each uneven breath. My heart pounded in my ears. Good night. It was as if something was building between us, something I couldn't ignore, and no matter how much I tried to fight it, I knew it was only a matter of time before it all came to a head. The afternoon heat was unbearable, so I decided a cool shower would provide the perfect relief. My room was peaceful, the only sound the distant hum of the outside world. Sunlight poured through the window, casting soft patterns on the walls and creating a serene atmosphere that felt almost surreal. I had just stepped out of my clothes, the fabric falling to the floor, and wrapped myself in a soft white towel. Its texture was soothing against my skin, and I could feel the coolness as I held it close. My hair was loosely tied back, a few strands falling free to frame my face, giving me an almost unintentional, carefree look that seemed to add to the calm of the moment. I was about to step toward the bathroom when something struck me. I had left my phone resting on the coffee table in the living room, feeling that there was no immediate need to answer it. The phone had been ringing constantly, but nothing seemed to suggest there was any urgency, so I figured it could wait a few minutes. But just as I reached for the door handle, I heard the soft but deliberate sound of footsteps just outside my door. The steps halted right outside, followed by a hesitant knock. "Aunt Maria!" Greg's voice called out from the other side. Before I could even think of replying, the door creaked open, and there he was standing in the doorway, holding my phone. Our eyes met, and for a brief moment, he seemed caught off guard. "Your phone's been..." He trailed off, his gaze shifting downward. I stood there, wrapped only in a towel, my skin still damp from the shower. The steam in the room clung to me, causing my bare shoulders to shimmer faintly. I could see the shock on his face, his eyes widening with surprise. For a heartbeat, he froze, mouth slightly open, as though he was trying to finish his sentence, but couldn't find the words. In that moment, I could feel my pulse quicken, my heart racing in my chest. The room, which had felt so spacious just moments before, now felt smaller, and the air thickened with every passing second. "Greg," I whispered, my voice barely audible, but enough to break the silence. My throat tightened, and I couldn't bring myself to say more. Before I could even process what was happening, Greg's movements were swift and purposeful. In an instant, he was standing right in front of me. His strong hands gently cupped my face, yet with undeniable firmness. His fingers traced the line of my jaw, and his eyes locked with mine, a mix of hesitation and something deeper flashing in his gaze. I felt a shiver run through me, as if he was searching for something within me, a connection that had suddenly become undeniable. "Aunt Maria, I can't hold back any more," he whispered, his voice low, filled with raw, desperate emotion. Then, without warning, he kissed me. It was not the kiss I had expected. It was electric, charged with an intensity that left me breathless. His lips were soft but insistent, moving against mine with a fierce tenderness I couldn't resist. For a moment, I stood frozen, shocked, my mind struggling to catch up with the rapid beats of my heart. But as his hand slid from my waist and pulled me closer, I felt something stir inside me, something that had been dormant for far too long. A hunger, a deep ache I hadn't realized was there until that very moment. "Greg," I whispered, breaking the kiss just enough to speak, but he didn't let me finish. His lips returned to mine, silencing me with a deeper, more passionate kiss that left me trembling. The intensity of the moment pressed against us. The towel slipped slightly, its fabric giving way to the growing tension, and instinctively I clutched it tighter. But Greg's hands were already there, steady and sure, holding me with a tenderness that made me feel invaluable, like something he had been waiting for. "I've wanted to do this for a very long time," he confessed in a raw voice, filled with yearning. His words washed over me, sending an electric thrill through my body. I didn't have time to overthink it. Before my own instincts took over, without hesitation, my arms found their way around his neck, pulling him closer. Our bodies fit together with an ease that startled me. I kissed him back with a surprising urgency, as if this moment had been building for years. The afternoon sun, once warm and gentle, now seemed to blaze hotter. Its rays intensified as we lost ourselves in each other's presence. Time seemed to slow, and the world outside faded until there was only us, tangled in this stolen, reckless intimacy. Eventually, my towel fell to the floor in a soft heap, forgotten in the heat of the moment. "Maria," he breathed, his voice thick with awe. His eyes locked onto mine, filled with a depth that left me breathless. His fingertips traced the curves of my body, so reverent, as though he were memorizing every inch of me. Each touch was tender and deliberate. I knew what we were doing was dangerous and forbidden. Part of me screamed to stop, to pull away, before we crossed a line we couldn't uncross. But in that instant, every ounce of reason, every shred of restraint, melted away. All I could feel was the raw, overwhelming sensation of being alive, cherished and desired in a way I hadn't felt in so long. Greg held me with a reverence that made my heart swell. His warm, steady hand slid down my back, tracing every curve with such tenderness that I shivered. My body responded to his touch in ways I couldn't have anticipated. His lips brushed against my neck, soft and lingering, sending waves of heat through me, leaving me trembling. "Maria," he whispered, his voice low and trembling against my ear. The intimacy of it made my heart race. "You're so beautiful. I've never seen anyone like you." The way he said my name, the tenderness in his voice, made my heart skip a beat. A blush spread across my cheeks, and when I looked up at him, his gaze was locked onto mine, fierce, intense, full of emotion that left me breathless. Slowly, he leaned in again, his lips capturing mine in a kiss that was deeper, filled with unspoken promises, passion, and longing that we both shared. As the kiss deepened, Greg's hands roamed over my arms, shoulders, and down to my waist. His touch was gentle but firm, pulling me closer, enveloping me in his strong embrace, as though he never wanted to let me go. I could feel the heat of his body pressed against mine, his heartbeat steady and strong, echoing in my chest, reminding me that we were both here, together, in this moment. "Greg," I whispered, my voice barely audible, trembling with the depth of the emotions rushing through me. But he silenced me with another kiss, deeper this time, as though he couldn't get enough. His lips moved against mine with a confidence that left me breathless. Every touch was more urgent than the last. One of his hands cupped my face, his thumb gently brushing over my skin, as his eyes bored into mine with an expression that was both tender and intense, filled with quiet awe. "I've dreamed of this," he confessed, his voice low, thick with emotion. "Of holding you, of being close to you. You have no idea what you mean to me." His raw, vulnerable words made my heart ache in the best possible way, opening a floodgate of emotions I hadn't realized I had been holding back. I reached up, my fingers trembling, as they traced the line of his jaw, marveling at how real he felt, how solid and tangible. It was as if he could be the answer to everything I had been missing. "I didn't know I could feel this way again," I admitted, my voice shaking, the vulnerability of the moment making my chest tighten. "You deserve to feel this way," Greg said, his voice unwavering, filled with an intensity that left no room for doubt. "You deserve to be loved, to be cherished, to feel wanted. You deserve this, Maria." His words wrapped around me like a promise, and in that moment, I realized I was ready to let go of everything that had been holding me back. The moment felt almost dreamlike, as though we were suspended in a world of our own, the only two people who existed in that universe. The afternoon sunlight filtered through the window, its golden rays spilling across the room, enveloping us in a soft, comforting warmth that seemed to heighten the magic of the moment. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, his voice filled with tenderness as his eyes locked onto mine, searching for any sign of uncertainty or hesitation. He seemed to be waiting for some kind of affirmation, as though he could sense the depth of the emotions swirling between us. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice quieter now, vulnerable in its honesty. "But I don't regret it. Not at all." Greg's smile was gentle and full of warmth. His hand reached up to brush a stray lock of hair from my face, the touch as familiar as it was tender. "Neither do I," he said, his words simple, but carrying an unspoken promise of something more. For a while, we lay there together, the weight of the world outside forgotten. We savored the closeness and intimacy of the moment. There was a quiet comfort in the silence between us, the feeling that for once, nothing else mattered except the bond we shared. But as time passed, and the light of the afternoon began to wane, a shift started to take place inside me. The reality of the situation, the significance of what had just happened, slowly crept into my thoughts, unsettling the calm that had enveloped me. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I found myself in the garden. The cool evening breeze brushed against my skin, carrying with it the scent of blooming flowers. I sat on the edge of the stone bench, my mind racing, trying to piece everything together. What did this mean for us? Had we crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed? Could we simply return to how things were before? Or had we changed something fundamental between us? Something we couldn't undo? The uncertainty gnawed at me, the weight of it heavy on my chest as I tried to make sense of everything. I sat there, deep in thought, wondering what the future might bring. Greg entered quietly, his presence offering a calm contrast to the emotional storm that had been swirling inside me all afternoon. He had the ability to calm my thoughts, yet somehow, whenever he was around, the emotions I had been trying to hold back surged forward, impossible to ignore. "Aunt Maria." Greg's voice broke through the silence, soft yet firm, filled with both tenderness and an unshakable determination. "I know this is complicated, But I don't regret anything that happened today. More than anything, I don't want it to end here. Not like this. I turned to face him, my heart heavy with a mixture of conflicting emotions, confusion, desire, guilt, and yet an undeniable yearning. His words, although calm, stirred unease in me. Greg, this isn't just complicated. It's wrong, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. He met my eyes without hesitation, a fire in his gaze that made me feel he wasn't backing down. Why? He asked, the challenge in his tone clear. Is it because of what others might think? Because of the age difference between us? I paused, trying to steady my breath. The truth was, it wasn't about what others might think, or the years between us. It wasn't about any of the concerns I was supposed to worry about. No, I whispered. None of that matters to me. What matters is how I feel about you. That's what's making this so difficult to process. His words resonated deeply within me, reaching a place I couldn't quite express. He was being completely honest, raw even, and I saw the sincerity in his eyes. I wanted to believe him, to allow myself to follow him wherever this strange and frightening path might lead. But a deeper fear held me back, a fear of judgment, of what I was risking, and a fear of losing control. Days went by, but the tension between us only grew. It hung in the air like a constant presence, lingering in every space we shared. Greg, ever patient, gave me the space I needed, but never once let me forget that his feelings hadn't changed. He didn't push, but he didn't let go either. Despite my attempts to distance myself, to silence the feelings stirring within me, I couldn't deny the pull I felt whenever he was near. That moment earlier in the day had altered something between us. I could feel it deep inside, in the way the air seemed to hum whenever he was close. I just didn't know if I had the strength to admit it, to give in to it, or if fear would win and drive us apart forever. That evening, the air was thick with unsaid words, thick enough to make it impossible for me to focus on anything. I sat on the couch, trying to distract myself with the TV. But my thoughts kept drifting back to him, back to us. I didn't hear him approach, but somehow I felt his presence before his voice broke the silence. "Aunt Maria," he said softly, his voice carrying a hint of hesitation that slowly turned into resolve. I looked up to see him standing there, his expression open and vulnerable, yet filled with quiet strength. His eyes met mine, searching for something, maybe reassurance, maybe understanding. Without a word, he moved to sit beside me. The distance between us vanished in an instant, and I could feel the warmth of his body, the heat of his proximity spreading through me. "I don't want to keep pretending," Greg confessed, in a low but clear voice. "I don't want to act like nothing happened when all I can think about is you." The words hung in the air, their weight settling heavily on my chest. He didn't look away, waiting for me to say something, anything, but all I could do was stare at him, overwhelmed by everything I couldn't yet understand. "Greg, this isn't easy for me," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I've lived my life so carefully, so cautiously, and now everything is so different, so overwhelming." He gave me a soft, understanding look. "Maybe it's time for something different," he said gently, his voice calm and reassuring. He reached for my hand, his fingers wrapping around mine with a steady warmth that felt like a lifeline, grounding me in a way I hadn't expected. I looked at him, really looked at him, beyond the familiar, charming young man I had known for so long. I saw someone who truly cared about me, not just as family, not just as his aunt, but as a woman. Someone who saw me for all I was and all I still had to become. In that moment, something inside me shifted, like a quiet wave that altered everything in its wake. Without fully thinking, I leaned toward him, drawn by a force I couldn't resist. I closed the gap between us, my lips meeting his in a kiss that started soft and tentative, but quickly deepened as the world around us faded. His hands moved to cradle my face, his thumbs brushing gently over my cheeks, sending a shiver through me. The kiss was more than just a physical act. It was an expression of all the unspoken emotions between us, a silent promise that we both understood. He kissed me as though I were the only person who mattered in that moment, the only thing in the world worth his attention. When we finally pulled away, breathless and wide-eyed, I could see the intensity in his gaze. It was a look that made my heart race even faster. His eyes locked on mine with a depth that sent a thrill through me. From that moment on, everything between us changed. There was no going back, no pretending things were the same. Greg and I found ways to steal quiet, private moments together, moments where time seemed to slow down. Whether we were cooking side by side in the kitchen, our laughter filling the air, taking peaceful walks in the garden, or simply sitting together on the couch, the world outside no longer mattered. Each moment we shared felt like a precious gift. Greg was always thoughtful, always finding ways, both big and small, to show me how much I meant to him. He would surprise me with flowers picked from the garden, their bright colors standing out against the quiet of our lives. He'd leave sweet, handwritten notes in places where I'd find them, on the kitchen counter, tucked into the pages of my book, always at just the right moment. And whenever we were alone, his hand was always reaching for mine, his fingers intertwining with mine as though he were holding on to something he never wanted to let go of. One evening, as we sat together under the vast, star-filled sky, Greg turned to me, his expression serious and thoughtful. The air was cool, but his presence beside me warmed me to the core. "I want you to know something," he said, his voice steady and filled with raw, unshakable emotion. "I'm not going anywhere. Whatever happens, whatever challenges we face, I'm here. I'm with you." Tears welled in my eyes as the weight of his words sank into my heart. I reached for his hand, gripping it tightly. "Greg, you've brought so much light into my life," I whispered, my voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what I'd do without you." He gave me a soft smile, one that made my heart ache with love. "You'll never have to find out," he replied, pulling me into his arms. In that moment, wrapped in the warmth of his embrace, I knew without a doubt that we were in this together, no matter what the future held. Our love blossomed into something deeply personal, a secret we treasured, a bond that grew stronger with every passing day. We knew the world around us might never truly understand the depth of what we shared, but that didn't matter. What mattered was the peace we found in each other's company, the unspoken comfort in the quiet moments we spent together. Our hearts, once weighed down by the complexities of life, became lighter with every embrace, filled with a love so powerful it overflowed into every part of our lives. Greg brought me back to life, sparking a fire I thought had long since faded. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to hope again, to believe in the possibility of happiness. In his embrace, I found a love that was both tender and fierce, a love that was not only real, but uniquely ours. A love with its own rhythm and heartbeat, one we held close and protected from the world.